Welcome to Womb Talk. I'm your host, Elizabeth Vanderwalt, the owner and founder of Fruitful Womb Doula Services. In Womb Talk, we like to go over different topics that are acceptable for all audiences. We're not medical professionals. Everything on this podcast is to educate you so that you can make better choices for your body. If you have a passion of all things women's health, then let's start listening. Don't forget to check us out on social media because we're on a lot of platforms. Today, with me, I have the incredible PearlAnn, and she is going to share her birth story with us. I've got a few questions, but let's go off topic. Just tell us how things go. Like, I'm freestyle here. I'm all freestyle. And to all the new folks, this is just going to be raw. So if you don't like that, you maybe want to dip out. So did you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and like what you like to do in life, those kind of things?
I'm PearlAnn Snowstar. I am a person who loves being free. And despite what people think saying that I'm deprived, I have no sex partner, no kids ever. I love my freedom. And I wish people would stop thinking that women have to be incubators for men. And I basically love being single and free. I'm into all kinds of Beauty and the Beast stuff. I am an author now. I have to say I'm an author.
Ooh, yay.
Uh, because even though I'm not getting paid for writing my stories are at CAB Challenges, which is a Beauty and the Beast club. I do almost every challenge I could try to get my hands on. And I'm also She's Not Dead. So if you're watching the DVDs, flash alert, go to the fan sites. Catherine's live and well living with Vincent. I love all kinds of music, although I'm not too fond of jazz or hip hop, but there are some that I like. My most favorite music is from Beethoven to Kraftwerk, which is space music. My stories I'm now reading is happily ever after between humans and non-humans. I'll put in a context. Mr. Spock's mother and father.
Oh, wow.
I read Ruby Dixon, which is extremely X-rated, more than our steamy. I'm not into the kinky stuff, but my authors are Emma Sam, Ruby Dixon, Elsa Kova. She writes great fae and human stories. So I have to have happy ever after because I think people, even with Star Wars and Star Trek, they want to jump into bed. They have people. There's nothing wrong with people remarrying when somebody dies, but for me, I like the idea of a soulmate where I don't need nobody else. I have this person, just like Jimmy and Rosalind Cotter, a great example. He's up there now with his Rosalind. So 70 years of marriage. Wow.
That is a very long time.
Especially for a president, and especially from what I'm hearing, faithful. Oh, Jimmy, we are going to miss you. But basically, I do like to write. I like music. I I'm just a character that will blurb out everything. So my brother says, please try to. He tries to keep everything quiet. I do not.
Blurt it out. It's all good.
Yeah,
I'm the
especially
same way.
yeah. I warned him, and he says, no, no. He says, I don't want to hear the podcast. He says, I'm no. He says, I know you're going to blur stuff up that I don't want people to know. I'm going okay. So
Well, then, if he ever gets to hear through the grapevine, if it gets really off the case, then you could be like, PearlAnn is famous, and it was because she said everything she wanted to say. So, you
yeah,
can go.
he already knows that I've been on many Zoom chats with other people, and one time he was on a Winterfest chat with me, and no, not Winterfest. We were at a convention. That's right. It was a convention chat with Cleveland because Cleveland had to go online, and it was his birthday. So I had 64 people that he didn't even know singing happy birthday to him. He goes, never again. I'm not Zooming with you again. I don't know what the heck you're going to do to me.
I'm sensing introvert, and you're an extrovert, and that's kind of playing in there a little bit.
Yeah, I'm both introvert and extrovert.
Who
And
did you give
it
up a
fits
name like that?
because um, I mostly write with my left, I mostly write with my right hand, mostly in my diary when I make notes. But if I get tired, I use my left hand to print.
Interesting.
When I play music with my left hand. And I try going back into using a keyboard, but it's like, no, I got too much to do with the writing, so I can't get back. Although I relearned how to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but I mostly play music with the left. And it's very weird because I have strange I sometimes I have to use both hands because that's just the way I am.
Yeah. Your brain
So
is very smart to be able to do both. That's a very good skill. That's not something to be ashamed about at all. That's very intelligent. It says of your wisdom.
I hope so.
So, if I heard correctly, you've never had kids, so you're telling the birth story about how you were brought into the world then?
Yes,
Okay.
I was born at Chanute Air Force Base in Rantoul, Illinois. Whew, Air Force brat. Um, while I finally got in my older years to accept I am an Air Force brat, um, my mother had a hard time. She was only 99 pounds. I came out at 9 pounds, um,
Wow.
10 ounces. I nearly killed my mother. Um, the stories I found out, I had to go sifting between exaggeration and the truth, but apparently my mom felt her labor pains earlier in September. And these were strict Catholics, so she kept a calendar, you know. And they said, no, the baby's fine. 1954, it's like she's not ready to come out yet. Well, they waited till November and they had to literally break her hip bones because I was already in the birth canal.
Oh, wow.
So they couldn't do a cesarean. They realized that they waited too long from September to November 1st. She was in labor for a day, a whole 24 hours.
Wow, that is a long one.
I thought everything was exaggeration until I talked to my aunts and they said, yeah, your father, the Air Force captain, wasn't even there when she was at the hospital. They had to keep her in there at the Air Force Base hospital for a week. She needed blood transfusions, everything. But she somehow survived. She said she managed to nurse her little baby and she survived that. And of course, a couple of years down the road, 2 years later, she had my brother when she was about 113 pounds and he was only a normal 8 pound baby. And I'm like, you did that wrong, mom.
It did it backwards.
Yeah, I was her first birth. And basically, I don't remember much of my childhood except for it being domestic violence. My mother, the only reason my dad was the Air Force captain was he got a kick out of the Air Force captain signing my birth certificate. But I lost that, the original one. And when I got the one from Chanute Air Force Base, there was no captain signing. It was just a regular copy of the birth certificate. But it was just like my mom did not have support. She could write to her sister because they were in Rantoul. She used to joke I was her baby elephant. I could understand that.
Not the
It
nicest
was a
comment,
party.
but
Yeah, and as I kept growing up, I noticed during my childhood the verb. It was just a strange childhood because I was always glad when Dad left. But when Dad came back, my mom had to force me to hug him because I didn't like hugging him. I seen him beat my mom. I seen him rape my mom, and he used to do it in a way where nothing would show up because he would hit us in the stomach.
oh.
So there was domestic violence all along. But my mom, when she eventually had to move back to Joliet, because I don't know, he was moving around a lot. It was the best thing because at 10 years of age, the relatives finally got her and they found out she had no heat or water in the house. We had to walk to the grocery store. He left with nothing and he took my brother with him.
Oh,
He
wow.
was 8 at the time. So the moment I left that situation, I at first hated my mom. I thought, why didn't she leave in the first place? Why did we get all messed up like this? But when you're a teenager, you blame your mom for everything. It wasn't until I got to work, met people in Chicago, different people, that I understand she was a victim of domestic abuse. And even now, when you see people on TV, I could see people like me screaming, well, leave him. They can't. For
Yeah.
some reason, they just can't. And I learned to grow and understand that, but she never had help. She was always on her own. She was always enduring when we had no heat or water. And when we went on the farm, she was chopping wood so that she could pay for living on the farm because she had no job or car. She had to learn herself. So mom and I became friends starting in my 20s. And it was more like a friendly relationship. I called her mom, love the mama, love the baby, but was more of a friendship. And then when later in the 2000s, when she lived at assisted living and started getting dementia and everything, it was like I hate to say this, but it's like I do miss her now that she's gone in 2020. But sorry, mom, I can now write. I can do everything that I wanted to do because I was too busy working and trying to take care of her.
Yeah. That's the hard part when you're taking care of people. I know, like my grandmother too, my sister takes care of her, and like a lot of the day goes into that. And like my sister and I have had discussions because Omen hasn't been doing too well the past little while, and we're like, the life once she's gone, your life is going to completely shift. Like
Oh yeah.
the amount of hours that get soaked into caregiving is so substantial, right? And
Right. And you know what? I wasn't even actually a caregiver per se. It was mostly done by the nurses because she eventually had to go to a nursing home, which I call prison camp for seniors, but there was no choice. Um, but as I go through my diary and all, I talk with people and they said, it's not doing the nursing part only. She says, you were working, driving to and from Joliet, calling her, yelling at the nurses, even though she was in a good facility. And then I was spending like 1,000, 2,000 extra a month to keep her out of the welfare nursing home so she can stay there. And welfare only paid so much. And then they said you were washing her clothes because clothes were getting stolen. So I did that. So I was basically doing so much that by 2018, I broke down and I couldn't even walk because
oh,
everything, like for my overweight, between work as an admin, working, getting to work, the 12-hour, and then going back and forth and with the phone calls, oh my God, it was like
a lot of pressure.
a lot of, yeah.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change it in the world because I used to love when I came down Saturdays. Nursing home food is terrible. They're too spicy. My girlfriend liked the food, but my mom never did. I used to bring her food and stuff like that, and it was like, yeah. She used to like my other friend Lori in Oak Lawn as her daughter because she got married and had kids and stuff. So it was sometimes the most heartbreaking about dementia, I would say, is when it occurred just before the COVID where we couldn't see her.
Yeah.
It's like when you go there and you know that she's slowly going down. And the first time when we took her to the nursing home, she wanted me to go with her. I mean, she wanted to go with me. And I says, I can't do that. And she started going downhill. And then one day I walked in, it was like a couple of months before they actually had the COVID closed down in 2019. I walked in one day, she didn't know who I was. I'm going to start crying right now.
It's
That,
okay.
that's the hardest part
Yeah.
of dementia and Alzheimer, the hardest part. And it's like occasionally she would remember certain things. So I used to sing to her over the Zoom. They used to have us have Zoom chat. And I used to sing to her. And my girlfriend reminds me, well, she could hardly hear, but she used to think that I was a very good singer. So I'm like, I was grateful to the nursing home, but at the same time, they were so understaffed. They didn't pay their staff well enough. And I could see that I made a living will that if something happens to me, I don't care if it's dementia or whatever, I would choose to go into the woods or someplace. I will not go into the nursing home. I sign it into my living trust. My power of attorney
Smart.
knows it.
Smart.
I will not. It takes your freedom away. She couldn't enjoy her Lawrence well, and I didn't have a smartphone. And then when she was dying, the only thing I was grateful for the nursing home, besides the nurses like Allie, who used to help her out, um, was the fact that being my brother had to come from Alabama. They had the nursing home closed down, but he allowed us for a whole week to see my mom as long as we wear the mask. He had a separate room set aside. They said she died of her old age and heart condition, but we knew the COVID took her because she caught it.
Oh.
And then she recovered. And now they're telling me, well, you could change the death certificate. I'm going, for what? $100? What? Yeah, it's not worth it. Let it be.
Yeah.
But
Let certain things lie, as they say.
Yeah. So that's why my brother didn't want to mention it because he's working in a good place. I'm not mentioning what, even though it's hard work. And he doesn't want to talk about his past, and I don't blame him. That's how he deals with it. I learned with Beauty and the Beast starting in Tunneltown in 1990, even though I drifted off with real life and mom and didn't get back into 2018. That was my therapy session. I learned it's just amazing how Beauty and the Beast had so many people
Yeah.
that had suffered almost similar situations.
Yeah.
It's like
That's a fun
therapy.
community. That's actually where we met, just for the preface for anyone else. That's how we
Yeah,
met. It's through Beauty and the Beast.
yeah.
But it's
It's therapy. It was therapy, and I would have to say now, being at 70, I don't let things get to me anymore because I'm on my twilight zone. The thing is that my girlfriend says I got too much stuff in my house. I'm going, I proved to her that you can't find Of Love and Hope on Amazon Prime Music, even though
yeah,
I have it. I says there's everything that I would like to keep and have, but now I'm starting to slowly give it away because basically I don't want it tossed away. I've seen how my cousin or even my girlfriend who died at 65 in 2019, how they just took her stories that she wrote by hand, and they never published them like she asked them to do. So with all that information, everything, I made sure my living will has everything intact. I have Joanne Baca's name. I says, if you see Beauty and the Beast stuff, don't throw it away. Ask her where to send it. I says, I'm slowly getting things away and I'm just going to keep certain things. But
yeah,
I want to die with my Beauty and the Beast around me, not like mom, where she had to wait till Chuck with the smartphone and Elvis Presley. And the thing that gets me is I'm also psychic. And I can tell when she was ready to go. And he was playing her favorite songs from Elvis, How Great Thou Art. And he was playing her next favorite song, It's Now or Never. And I looked at my brother, 8:55, I remember, in the morning on Saturday, October 10. I looked at my brother and said, Rita's coming for him. Rita was his sister. He looked at me, and all of a sudden I was saying, It's now or never. And she went. And
wow,
he says, I gave him the chills. I go, I can't explain it. I say it's seeing, but it's really not seeing. It's a different type of sense.
really.
I'm like
There you
Narcissa. I'm Narcissa. I identify with Narcissa.
go.
So I'm into paranormal and everything. Yes. And I will admit that, yes, I have seen aliens. I have seen demons. And even if you tell me that it was my imagination, I will deny it because I've seen it. I know I've experienced it. And I know that when I was 10 years old, when I tried to commit suicide, a guardian angel saved me.
Oh wow.
And drowning is not the way to go. It doesn't work. It takes too long.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing is, I now know why. I'm having the best time of my life.
You were well needed for everybody.
I mean, and it's like, I don't mind talking about this because maybe I don't have proof or anything. Maybe it might be a little exaggerated. But I find, unlike my brother, I agree now with most people. I agree with Oprah Winfrey. I agree with them. It's better to talk it out because by talking it out, we stop people from abusing women.
Yeah.
If they say, well, if that happened to her, and I noticed on one of your questions, and I know you probably will ask it, but it was the last little notation. What's the one thing you share with new mothers that they should know?
Yeah.
The
There you
one
go.
thing
Yeah.
I
Go
would
ahead.
share, the one thing I would share is keep your family close. If you didn't see the warning signs when you were dating this person and they try to separate you from your friends and family, leave before the situation gets worse. If you are in a domestic violence situation where supposedly he's not hurting your kids, and I would even say this to guys because guys get domestic situation too. Even if they're not hurting their kids, they are hurting you,
Yeah.
and your kids will reflect that. And it's just yes. If you're in a domestic situation, it is not your fault. He or she will not change and get out of that situation. I don't care if you have to leave everything, coat, car, or whatever. Leave before it gets worse.
That's very good
That's the one thing
advice.
I would give to mothers.
That's
Leave.
very good advice. Especially
Of
about the
course,
keeping the family close.
of course, people would not listen to. I never listened to advice, but somewhere out there, I hope at least one person would, because it affects your children, even if they're not beating them up. It affects your children.
I think with everything, and at least with advice, is that if you're listening to things, things are working in your brain slowly. Like
Yes,
every story I get to hear, every conversation you have, it all stays with you a little bit. I mean, our brain can only hold so much information, but I believe that conversations stick out the most,
right.
especially like one on one, like we're having now. And I think even though if it's not like, oh, I'm going to follow what, PearlAnn said. It's more of like, oh, quite a few people have said to get out or keep the family. You know what I mean? Like those things stay in the back of your head somewhere, somehow. So,
And
very
another
interesting
thing
take on
too
it.
is, my mom blamed the relatives for taking her from her nice house in Elk Grove, which, believe me, after having no heat or anything, I mean, it was a nice house, but it was a prison camp, and they pulled her away, and it took her a long time to accept the fact that, they pulled her away. He divorced her, and everything changed, but they did the smart thing. And so, if somebody's in a domestic abuse situation, do not hesitate. My relatives, when they saw what was happening when I was 10, did not hesitate. They grabbed the truck, they grabbed the car, and when he was gone off on one of his Air Force missions or whatever,
Yeah.
they grabbed her. And he took Chuck on one of the missions, so they couldn't grab him, but they grabbed me and they took us to the farm. And they had to keep mom down and they had to get her surrounded with lawyers. But she still, even in the nursing home, she still wanted her husband back, which breaks my heart. But it happens for
Yeah.
some reason. People, especially women, feel that they can't get out of that. And I just remember this is 1954. This is a strict Orthodox Catholic. Now I love my Catholic faith and traditions. I do have them, but I'm no longer a Catholic. I am a multi-faith person. I do read the Bible, but I don't think the Bible is literal because I think Adam and Eve is a fictional story because both women and men were created equal. And I told my brother, you may be shocked because when they come to say the Our Father in my funeral, I asked the funeral home to say Our Mother and Father. So I am totally out there in outer space, and as they say, but it's like, this is me.
Yeah.
I've seen the bad side, the good side, and I says, women have been put down in their fates. Women have been put down as, it's probably why I never married, because I may have, occasionally tried to be like society, go out on dates. The first date I went, I was watching Planet of the Apes, and the guy wanted to shut up, so I slugged him. Luckily, he didn't. Luckily, it was 1975, and nobody would think anything of it, because how would a guy would want to admit that a girl slugged him during a date? But I learned that I couldn't divorce myself from the fear I was going to marry my dad. So eventually, it got to the point where I realized I'm too selfish for a relationship. If I want to get up when I want to get up or write a story when I realized the relationships, just like Jimmy and Rosalind example, or Betty White, and even in my own family, the people that married for 65 years, it's a give and take.
Yeah.
It's not all, happy. It is happily after, but you still got to do the dishes.
Yeah.
So with my background at 17, I made peace with myself, and that's a good thing to do before I go. The only regret I have is I haven't jumped out of a parachute yet, but it's now too late for me to do it. I'm zip lining might be considered, but
Maybe one day, who knows where technology goes? Maybe you still get a chance.
and I think our technology would go for helping older people, like using robots and stuff, because those nurses, the good ones, the good nurses, and there were a couple of them, they were working shifts and everything. And I found out from one nurse, I asked her, this was 2019. I asked her, I said, out of curiosity, I says, thank you for combing mom's hair and helping out. She's no longer at the nursing home, that she left, and I don't blame her. And I says, we were talking about salaries, and she says, yeah, I was making a good salary. I go, oh, that's good. Yeah, $9 an hour. I'm going, what? $9 an hour, working in the Alzheimer double shift. There's no justice. That just, ugh. So I've been a feminist, as you can tell. I'm the one that burned, and you know what they say that nobody burned their bras. I'm sorry, I did in 1977. I did. I voted for Shirley Chisholm as my first president, which of course she didn't win. In '72, I voted for Jimmy Carter in the next one. Then I went to Reagan. So I had a I mostly voted for women. I voted for Hillary Clinton, and I try to vote for Camilla. And I'm always screaming at the politicians. There's nothing wrong with a woman in office. Look at Elizabeth II.
Yep. I myself, although I'm not a huge prime minister fan, I did love the Queen. I really was obsessed with
Yeah.
Queen Elizabeth, and we're from Dutch descent, so my dad has a fascination. He's like, "Oh, you should like the Dutch Queen." I'm like, "She's not that talked about that much." So I kind of went with society. I'm like, well, English Queen, but
But we're always learning because, like I told you, I didn't know what doula meant.
yeah,
And then
yeah. Well,
I'm
but by your
looking,
story, you told me, and I mean, 1954. I don't know if that was even that popular of a career back then, um, like just in history itself. But uh, in that sense, maybe to side sweep from doula. But did your mom have anybody but herself actually at the birth that you know of, or was she literally just all alone in that hospital?
she was all alone and surrounded by Air Force captains. And
Darn,
there's
that's man.
and especially if you're getting near death carrying this baby, and it's like, and nobody listened to her that the baby should have been born as. Now nowadays, if she said the baby should have been born in September, they would have seen I was a big baby and she was tiny.
Yeah.
But then they didn't have MRI, they didn't have anything like that, and they thought women were crazy.
Yeah, that's been a very common thread of not listening. I see it still happen today. Sadly, it's
Yeah,
still
because
sometimes
now,
we're not
yeah,
being listened to. But
now America's going backwards, and we are having women dying because even if they miscarried, the doctors, like in Texas, are afraid to help them because they'll be put in jail without a trial
yeah,
because they aborted the baby. And that was not abortion. They had a 12-year-old girl that had to go to another state because she got raped by her father and was carrying the baby. Then you have Pope Francis saying that all birth is life. I'm sorry, I would take the mother's side and rape and incest instantly. I feel sorry for the baby, but it's going to have to go on to another life because I will not force a woman. Pregnancy changes your whole body.
it does. Yes.
And even though I never got pregnant, I used to hear women in the washroom at work, and they would tell you everything about swollen ankles, God knows everything. I was literally scared to death. I was never going to have a baby.
It was kind of your story. That's the thing. It's your story of like that it wasn't meant to be a little bit. But one of the other questions, and since it's your mom's story, I guess I'll just kind of see if you know a little bit. But did your mom have a bit of knowledge about birth beforehand? Like, I mean, we're talking here way 1920s, 50s, so I'm gonna assume probably her mother didn't tell her that much either. But
Her mother had 15 children. She
wow.
lived on a farm where when we went to the farm, it finally had electricity. Yes, Jimmy, I know about pumping water and cold water for the bath. But she lived on a farm, so she's seen animals giving birth. So
So
she
that
had
was
an
her
idea.
knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming that's still a very scary thing if it's just all men surrounding you, and it's
Yes.
kind of a little bit like my grandmother. She gave birth in 1963 to my mom, and she didn't speak English, so
Oh
my
God.
grandfather wasn't allowed in the hospital. And here in Canada, they were like, "Well, she's trying to leave, and they're not understanding what she's saying, so they had to tie her down." And so you're saying this, and I'm like, "Oh, this reminds me of what my mom told me about what grandma had to go through," and I'm like, "Oh Lord." It's just thankfully we're a little bit better times, just a little bit like, and that's not so intense as now, but I'm sure it does happen from other cultures as well when they come to like Canada, US, right, and can't speak English. I'm sure that doesn't help the situation.
Yeah, I would say to women nowadays to keep fighting for their freedoms because they're even taking it away from the gay community. America is just going down. I fear that people are going to find out that we have our first American dictatorship or authoritarian president in office because people rather buy 10-cent eggs and live in a cage and care more about themselves, which I can understand, the economy and stuff. But what good is having economy good for you if your neighbor is suffering? Because that's eventually going to happen to you.
Yeah, it's unfortunate on how things are going a little bit in the world, but
And women are getting so oppressed. Look what happened in Afghanistan. In
Yeah.
2 years, those women have lost their education, their freedom. Women give life.
Yeah.
And you're taking this life and you're saying, well, they're aborting babies, so they're not giving life. No, you're taking this life and abusing it. I could go on about the aliens that are abducting us, but that's another story. But you know
Uh,
what technology though, at least for us right now, while we still have freedoms, technology has been very helpful.
yeah, to share the word
So
a little bit. And that's
yeah,
kind of why I wanted to do something like this too, is just to like share stories. Like even the purpose of this, like hearing from your mom's story of like 1954 to the comparisons of today, like just those kind of things, they all play a part a little bit into, you know, as somebody says, you have the portal of life in between your legs.
yeah,
It's very
right.
helpful. um, but yeah, that's why I'm very excited that you came on here to tell us everything, because this kind of stuff, if people don't have good relationships with their family, maybe more people were distanced like yourself for a time being, and then they never got that bond. They don't have that same, I got to hear the story from my grandmother and mother. Like that's not
Yeah.
passed down as much. See, I'm close with mine, so I'm always told the stories, but other people don't have that, and that's kind of why I wanted to share it
Yes.
in a platform like this. But and you already shared your advice, so I kind of went through my 5 questions already. You were like,
I'm
you
a very
already.
organized. I'm a very organized administrative assistant. I may not be able to walk around and everything, but when I used to work at Chase for those 20 odd years per se, um, I did my administrative assistant job well. I made sure the meetings were on time. I made sure my boss had his reports. So it's part of me.
It's the type A personality, but we love it. I'm and I aspire to be type A. I think that's what my personality is. I always like, I want to make the list and stuff, but then the little part of laziness in me is like, it's not that important. And then the morning of, I'm like, oh, I'm not ready now.
And the funny thing is, like, I try to tell myself, I'd be like, very quiet, learn to keep my mouth shut because I'm going to get killed one of these days. I'm not going to die a natural death. I don't know. But then I see something about somebody talking about a woman. I said, I'll be damned if I walk 10 steps behind somebody and wear a burqa. To hell, I'll punch his lights out. I don't care.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's like, okay, that's it. I know I'm never destined to be married.
Well, I heard in one of the countries, you may have even posted it, but one of them, like, they're getting rid of the windows or something. That
Yes.
yeah, I maybe you posted it. I'm unsure. It probably was you.
Yeah.
Anything
I'm
real,
all,
like,
I'm
I'm like,
all,
I get it from you.
I'm all over Facebook,
Yeah.
and I sometimes go public with certain things, like I did about Carter's funeral. I have to admit, Trump did behave himself, but he was like a child. He couldn't wait to leave. And other people noticed certain things that I didn't notice. Now, while he and Obama were chatting, Obama is just like me. I mean, I could basically chat with my worst enemy, which is my father, but it's like I would not really care about him. But it was like, it's just so sad to see that our incoming president, that people are so cultish like, and you're seeing it around not only America, but elsewhere around the world. Authoritarian people are getting in and women are suffering.
Yeah. Well, hopefully things are changing in a better direction shortly. Hopefully. Oh, that's all we
Well,
can do at this point. Hope.
I'm gonna be Paul Revere. I'm gonna die fighting for my freedom.
Yeah. Smart. Smart. We need it. We need it. I'm very grateful that you came and you were talking about your story. I'm so happy. This is awesome because this is
I'm so
definitely.
glad to see you again,
I
Lisa.
know, I know. I was just telling Karen too. We'll have to talk. I plan to join the Winterfest this year better. It's just
Okay,
last year.
you know what? Speaking of this, I'll end this note. I started getting involved more and more with Winterfest and doing everything. So I have a chat called Feminism in the Tunnels. I discussed this with Linda that we have to make a warning. We're not going to delve into politics. We're just going to find out if Mary has ever spoken up against father. How would Jamie be as a single person in the tunnels? So I have a very interesting chat at Winterfest 2025 coming.
Ooh, that's gonna be fun.
And it's going to be very tricky to avoid people like me and other people. I know me, other people from getting political, but
Yeah,
politics does not belong in the tunnels.
yeah.
So we're going to try to keep feminism, but that's the title: Feminism in the Tunnels.
It's going to be
Oh,
very
this is
interesting.
gonna
I'm
be
going to have
good.
to link Winterfest in the chat from this. That wasn't the original intention, but like let's get some people maybe involved. Oh.
And yeah, and I'm like, yeah, I'm doing everything I can because that's my legacy now. My stories are out there. So even if eventually the computer goes away, I'm very proud of having written these stories. And now I actually looked at myself in the mirror and says, hey, I am an author.
You are, and that's amazing. Congratulations. You deserve all the praise. You have
Yes.
to send me the link and then I'll put it in like the show notes so that people could find it and then
Oh,
get it. Because
Winterfest.
yeah.
Edie, do you get Facebook, right?
Yeah. If you
I
send me
just
the link.
posted I just posted right now on Facebook about Winterfest with the links on it.
Okay.
Um, but let's just go back into it. Um, oh, Joanne Baca likes my yeah, my friends are very cautiously saying they like my stories, and it's like sometimes I have to take things back, but yeah, I still have your chats. You know what? I will go in there and give you the Winterfest link.
Okay. And then if you
Yeah.
send your stories as well, then I could put those for people
Oh,
to see
okay.
and stuff.
Yes.
And then they could read as you are an author, as an author. Oh my, can I not speak today? I've done too much talking already. Obviously, it's showing. Whenever
We
I
like to write,
ramble,
Lisa.
that's when you know.
We like to write. All I have to
Yeah,
do is go into Winterfest 2021 because you could go back in Winterfest and read the
yeah.
stories. And I had Family Continues as my first story with the great granddaughter of Vincent going in outer space
I
to
have
find.
read that one. Why did I forget? I read that one already. If there's more, I gotta find it. I'm a little
I'll send you the links, Lisa.
yeah
I have your email. It's better to send the
yeah.
links by email. I hardly use Messenger because I've been hacked through Messenger.
Um,
Yeah, I have trolls too, and I'm like, I'm not even famous, and I've got people that don't like me.
hey, maybe this episode gets really famous, and then you are famous afterwards. I mean, I don't know. It's only been like 100, 200 measly views here and there, but it is what
Yeah.
it is.
So I've got your email. I got
Yeah.
it up. So I'll send you the links so that you can post it, and I'll give you the information. I'll also send you because I keep up to date because this is my people. This is my as my brother. I told my brother this is my extended family. So if they show up at my funeral, you know why. Uh, because basically it's they give me the chance to be free.
Yeah.
I think some of them may have regretted it, but
That's
especially
the
when I
three
have a story about
personalities.
yeah, especially when I have a story about the lava lamp, but that's okay. Um,
I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
that was a cap challenge. Oh yeah, I'll send cap challenge to you. So
Yeah.
I'll get those links out to you, Lisa. I just saw
Wonderful.
virtual
Virtual
hug.
hug. Yes. Yes.
Oh my
I will.
God.
But I'll end this here and then we'll stay and chit chat for a little bit afterwards yet. But thank you everyone for watching and thank you for sharing your story, PearlAnn. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. And make sure everybody stay tuned for the next one. I'm sure there are lots of birth stories out there that we need to hear.
Oh yeah, I bet you there's some doozies out there,
Yep.
especially if those were born during a snowstorm. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the snowstorm ones are fun. I need to get one of those yet on here.
There were a couple people stranded on Lakeshore Drive, and it just reminded me, especially with the snowstorm that we're getting right now, it can happen.